Welcome back. You're watching Hard Copy coming to you from our studios in Abuja. My guest tonight is Jideonwo, a lawyer, author, entrepreneur and journalist. We're discussing a number of issues tonight and we're about to narrow down to the type of democracy we practice, not only in Nigeria but in Africa, asking if it's really the best form of government for us. Now some people have said that, you know, this is not really the best way to go. This 4-year cycle does not help any developing democracy, as it were. You have very little time, and then when you have especially a major infrastructure projects that need a long gestation period, what really can you achieve in 4 years?
I fundamentally disagree. We've had 4-year terms that have worked across the continent.
Examples?
Botswana, Namibia.
But Botswana had a different start.
So the problem is not structure then. The problem is foundation. That's what we're saying. But it has worked for these two countries. It's working for Liberia. It's a country that came out of a debilitating war, but that moved its GDP as of 2011 from $80 million to $500 million. You know, so I think that often Nigeria's problems can be like a person who is in pain or a person who fell into a pit latrine. And because the person is uncomfortable with the smell, the person wants to find any solution. Anything is a solution to the person. That's 4-year terms are not the problem of our democracy.
But we also saw in Liberia, remember Ellen Johnson Sirleaf saying she was going to do a Mandela as well, just a single-year term, but she changed her mind.
Well, I don't remember that, but it is possible.
I remember that.
But then she did 8 years, and then she left at the end of 8 years. And at the end of it, she supervised for the first time in how many years?
Isn't that being practical in the sense that for a country that was coming out of a civil war, for a country that needed a long time to, you know, for the project that she had initiated to be able to come to light,
so I agree,
she needed to spend 8 years.
Yes, so that's why I say it works. 4-year terms make sense.
But in a country where we spend so much on elections.
But we spend so much on elections.
I'm just
Many
wondering,
countries spend a lot of money in elections. So those things,
money we can afford?
So we need to reduce the amount of money in our politics. That is true. But again, that's not the fundamental reason why our country is bad. You know, we can solve the smaller issues, but we must be careful to remember what the bigger issue is. When Obasanjo ran for president, he spent a considerable amount of money against Olufalaye in 1999. But still, I still credit the Obasanjo administration, all flaws considered, as one of the most impressive governments we've had since I was born in my 32 years of being alive. And so the fact of how much he spent running didn't stop him from strengthening the strengthening NPC, strengthening EFCC, strengthening ICPC, strengthening MBS, strengthening the NEITI, strengthening the due process office, all of those things. That is an issue we need to solve, but it is not the issue that we need to solve. The issue we need to solve is leadership. Achebe said in 1984, and it was as true then as it is now, that Nigeria's problem is purely and squarely a question of leadership. When we finish solving all these structural problems, we will still find the problem of substance will remain. And that problem is leadership.
Well, that is also...
We've seen that in Rwanda. We've seen that.
Let me ask you, in your book, this book, which you just talked, you said the parties forget to disrupt themselves.
Yes.
Would you recommend independent candidacy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've had...
I mean, it's a situation where we're talking about political parties being too many on the ballot paper.
So there are too many because they give them money now. You know, we incentivize on seriousness in our political system. We incentivize it. People have an incentive to remain chairman of parties for extended period of time. You know, in effect, Peter Obi was an independent candidate in APGA when he ran, in effect, because he essentially took over a party that was moribund and used it as a vehicle for power. In effect, Olusegun Mimeko was an independent candidate because what he did was he took over a party that was essentially also moribund and used it as a vehicle for power. We do need those kinds of brave thinkers, irrespective of what you think about the quality of their governance. And I did think that Peter Obi did incredible work. You need people like that. You need people who are bold enough to shake the system.
Are you marketing Peter Obi already?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I said that, I just thought to myself, no, I'm not. But I mean, I also remember Mimiko. There are people that have taken over loose structures and created things. And on a national level, we need those kinds of we have too many candidates who are waiting for everything to align. And that's not how you change systems.
Just wondering, I mean, it's an election year already. There's so much going on.
Yes.
One of the things going on is the amendment to the Electoral Act. Are you watching that in the House of Representatives?
I'm paying attention to it.
Are you seeing any elements there that could be affecting drastically the results we might see in 2019, especially with the rearrangement of how INEC is supposed to do its elections?
Yes, that worries me, because that worries me. You know, I have a fundamental distrust for our legislators on the national level. And when they begin to tinker with something that is not spoiled, it begins to worry me. And we didn't have any problems with the arrangement of our electoral calendar in 2015. That was, like, we were fine with that. I mean, apart from the postponement by President Jonathan, but that was a temporary measure. And so I don't understand what the motivation is. I don't see the groundswell of requests for the amendment of that act in any substantial way.
Not even for the card reader?
Again, I have a bias against structural solutions. I always worry about structure, because structural solutions make you feel like you are making progress. It's like being on a treadmill. You are moving, but you're not moving anywhere. The problems that our democracy have fundamentally were solved when Goodluck Jonathan allowed INEC to run free and fair elections that couldn't be tampered with by the ruling party. That problem, that reality needs to be consolidated upon. That's what we need in 2019. What do other things look like when a gorilla is throwing dust in the air? And I worry, so I'm looking closely, I'm worried about what is going to happen when the dust settles.
This last one, and I'm sure we're almost totally out of time.
Right.
Are young people really ready to take over the reins of power? There's been a lot of talk about how young people should get involved. I'm sure you've had this conversation over and over and over again.
I had it all the time. I had it this afternoon.
From what you've seen so far?
Are young people ready? Of course they are. Are the young people who are on the scene at present ready? No. Now, I know that young people are ready, because young people are doing things in every other sector of Nigerian society. Nigeria's entrepreneurial wave is driven by young people. Nigeria's faith-based wave is driven by young people. Young people have proven that they can run systems, overturn, disrupt processes, and all of those things. Somehow or the other, they've not transferred that capacity to politics. I think it's because most of them don't see what the profit incentive is. Like, okay, so when I invest my time, and to be honest, some of them look at them like, okay, look at, you know, they see people who get involved, who try to change things, who face the heat, and they think to themselves, it's not worth my time. So what we have is that the quality of young people who are presently circulating around the political space are not exactly those that we will be proud of. But again, on the second...
You can say that for a fact?
I can say that for a fact, because...
Not the young people you have been mingling with?
The ones I see, and I don't want to name names, but the ones I see haven't, you know, people say that, oh, you know, some politicians, these young politicians are waiting because they don't want to invest their monies first and waste it. I'm like, President Buhari ran 3 times. He ran 3 times. He ran against the cynicism, opprobrium, insults that we insulted him. He kept doing it. There is a gumption that these older people have that the younger people have not been able to summon. Now, plus that, there is also a false assumption that what we need to change our politics is to get young people in government. And I remind people that Obasanjo was not an old man when he led Nigeria in 1979. Gowon was not an old man when he led Nigeria in the 1960s. O.J. Kalu, Donald Duke, all these guys who were governors when democracy returned in 1999 were not young, were not old men. Dimeji Bankole was not an old man. We've had young people in their 40s, in their 39-year-olds, 38-year-olds lead Nigeria. And Nigeria did not fundamentally change. In the American elections, there were 3 major candidates: Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. 70 years, 69 years, 70 years. Yet Bernie Sanders had an energy of fresh ideas that younger candidates like Marco Rubio couldn't even access. It is not the age of the candidates that is the problem. It's the age of their ideas, whether they are old or whether they are young. Let's focus.
Well, Jideonwo, thank you for coming on Hard Copy.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's the program tonight. But just before we go, some mails from last week. Ilesamido, on herdsmen and farmers, you say on the whole, anyone keeping poultry buys feed for the birds. So ranching would have made the herdsmen buy feed for the cows, which they don't want to do. Please, if a baggy man becomes president, with the Fulani man like if he imposes a poultry colony on them. And Ben Okorie says, hello Maokwe, in your last edition that featured Professor Odin Kalu, he said, I don't see the connection between the killing by herdsmen and restructuring. This is a very surprising position by the erudite professor. On the contrary, both are intricately connected. If the country was restructured along regional lines, the federal government cannot be talking of creating grazing colonies in regions for an issue that is strictly regional in nature. Only regional or state edicts can determine that. My humble thoughts, you say. Well, you too can send your mails and thoughts to the handles on your screen. And if you miss any addition, simply log on to channelstv.com. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Good night.